Okay, and welcome back to the third lecture, section 3, locating, organising and evaluating sources. Okay, so what you want to do here is locate a range of primary and secondary sources from different perspectives to help you answer your research questions. You need 3 primary and 2 secondary. If you make a slight variation to that, depending on your questions and your focus, discuss that with your teacher. Okay, so a source can be artifact, a website, a book, a documentary, photos, parts of your text, not your whole textbook, not a whole book. It's things like just a snippet, okay, because we really need to see it in your table. So we wouldn't say the whole textbook. It might be, on page 352 and it might be a small piece of text. You're not really going to be able to, have a look at a whole sort of text. So it's just taking those bits and snipping them out. It can be newspaper articles, political cartoons, posters, diary entries and letters. Okay, and I have decided to look at a poster just as an example for you. Now, a little tip with this one, and I really think it will help you select your sources as well, is to actually, as soon as you've finished your focus questions, I would actually, in order, copy and paste them into these sections here. So that means you would have your key question, your focus question, or questions on background events. Say there. Okay. The next one might be the role of an individual. Okay. The one after that might be the short-term impacts, the long-term impacts, and the continuities. Now, what you're going to find, if you pop those in straight away, they will also help you to sort of have a think about your sources. Because what you're going to find is these 3 sections here, they lend themselves very well to primary sources, okay? Because when you're looking at events leading up to, you want to sort of have a look at, what was happening at the time. If you're looking at the role of an individual, that can also, you can use a primary source for that. Sometimes you can use a secondary as well, but it does work well for primary sources such as speeches, where they've written a book, whether they've written letters. And I think for short-term impacts, primary sources are the only ones you can really use to a certain extent because you're looking at what happened next. Historians or secondary sources will tell you that. So it's not like you only have to look at primary, but they are good ones to start with. What primary sources can't do very well or at all is they really can't look at long-term, these ones here, long-term effects or continuity, which is what's continuing on. It's not possible because they're of the time. They're constructed when the event is taking place. There's no way when you're living through an event that you're going to understand its significance further on down the track. So really those last 2 sections, looking at significance, continuity and long-term, you should be looking at secondary sources for that. And that are things like textbooks, historians, little snippets of quotes or books or journal articles that they've written. You might look at a history learning website. There's quite a few out there. So they're the sort of things that make that judgment. How significant was it? Does it still continue on today? Okay, so that's what you want to have a look at. So be really kind of, really think about how you're going to match up your sources to your questions. Okay, so we've got this one here, a source I've just plonked in because it's in an imprint, looks a bit weird, but you'd normally just put it in this section here. So I have chosen a recruitment poster. It is an Australian recruitment poster. The name of it is Australian Recruitment Poster, A Call from the Dardanelles. The origin, I have found this one on the website. The origin is actually the original author of the source is the Department of Defence. Okay, a Department of the Commonwealth Defence. So that's sort of what I'd look at. But I would also, it's from pop in my bibliography where I got it from, of course, which is my web link. And I got that from the Australian War Memorial, a really excellent resource for all things World War One, I think, in Australia. So, I've got it from a reputable source. All right. Now, I don't want, see, I've plonked the actual source in. That's what I want you to do. We don't want to see when we're marking across this way, right? We've got to look at the source, we've got to do that, and we've got to marry it up to a question. I don't really want to see, as a marker that has to mark a lot of these, I don't want to have to go onto the website, find the source, then have to flick back down here. Make it easier on your marker. You must put the source, the snippet you're looking at, here, where I've put mine. Okay, and then you're answering it across. Makes it easy for everybody, including yourself. Okay, so the perspective of the source is the point of view. Well, it's constructed by a government department. So I'm going to be fairly safe to say, this is a recruitment poster. It's from the point of view of the government. The perspective is a government perspective. And really have a think of the purpose. Well, it's kind of aimed at, trying to get more people, more of the boys at home, the young men at home to join up and enlist. Okay, the Dardanelles is Gallipoli, and you'd find that out as you were researching around it. And so it's about, won't you come over and give us a hand? So the perspective is a government one, and it is also aimed at, persuading people to join up and go to Gallipoli. And so, that's sort of what we're looking for there with perspective. What's its attitude? What is its point of view? Okay, so what are its strengths and its weaknesses? Now, what I don't want to see, and what is completely a little bit of a myth, is this sentence. Source is strong because it is a primary source, full stop. Well, actually, that's not a reason. It's the type of source that it is. It's a classification. Strengths and weaknesses of a source can be different. Now, I could find a primary source that is a terrible primary source, and it can be very weak. Okay, people taking, notes at the time, maybe it is a very biased political speech that's aimed at persuading people to do something they don't want to. Well, it might be strong in showing me that leader is a liar, but it might not be all that strong in showing me, good, reliable evidence about that event that I can trust. So you have to really look at it just on its own merits. Okay, it's the same as secondary. Not all secondary sources are bad. In fact, they're invaluable because we can't look at an event past its time date without it. It's actually impossible. You guys would not be able to learn about history without secondary sources because your textbook is one. Websites will often contain secondary material. So, they are very strong or weak, depending on what you're looking at and what it's sort of, what you're trying to find from that evidence. So there's going to be things that are strong for your particular topic and that are going to be weak for that. So let's have a little look in terms of this poster. So we have a looking at it. It's, a guy in a slouch hat, cooey, won't you come? It's very Australian. It's traditional Australian identity. So one potential strength of this could be is that it, it presents that very well. It presents the Australian identity in 1915, which was a traditional one, as evidenced by the words "cooey, won't you come?" This is something that would appeal to people at the time because they're using it in a persuasive poster to get people to join up, to inspire them to do that. So that's giving us an insight into the types of things that young men might find appealing. So it might be a sense of adventure, or it might be helping a mate out. Okay, so that's sort of quite strong. A weakness could be that, it's really over-exaggerating, where the Australians are at over there in the Dardanelles, which is Gallipoli. You know, we weren't doing that well. I'm pretty sure that, you know, not all the soldiers were sort of standing across, you know, on top of the situation, which is suggested here by the guy kind of standing right on top of these sort of, you know, two key parts in the battle. You know, if you were looking at another source from someone in the trenches that's doing it tough, they are not going to say that, you know, this is a great adventure where we can go and help our mates out. You know, we're not sitting up there in our beautiful uniforms looking all strong. You know, we're struggling. We don't have enough to eat, or we don't have the right equipment, or whatever it is. So, you know, the weakness of this source is it's kind of misrepresenting the actual experience. Also have to think about, you know, this word here, which is omission. What is it not telling us? You know, it's not really telling us, you know, sort of what is going on over there. It's not a true representation. You know, Gallipoli was not a success. You know, it's sort of got some issues there. One of the other issues you want to have a look at here is bias. You know, like, so this is quite biased. It's aimed at persuading people to do something. So in terms of, it shows that bias quite well. So that's a strength. You know, it shows the type of methods used by the Department of Defence to entice people to join up. That could be a strength, but as a weakness, could be exaggerating the situation, you know, showing a very strong soldier when in fact the actual event itself is not going so well. And so they're the kind of things. So you want to look at omissions, like what's not in there. You want to look at bias. You want to look at motivation. You know, like why is this poster like it is? You know, what's the motivation of the person that produced it? You know, is it just to get people to enroll? Is it to show that the war effort is doing well? And, you know, you never know sometimes, but you can sort of make an educated guess, sort of based on what you've read about that source as you've been choosing it. So, you know, strengths and weaknesses are very subjective as to what you're going to need it for, but you need to sort of have a good look at both. So omissions, bias, motivation, time, place, and purpose of your source for both are good things to consider. Okay, so, you know, is it the date that it was produced in particularly significant, you know, and that could be a strength for your area of study. Is it, it could be a weakness as well. So these things can be both. It just depends on what you need the source for. So that's the extent to the source analysis there. Okay, I'm just going to switch screens and adjust, so bear with me, to the next section. And it doesn't look like the screen is going to go, so I'm going to actually stop this right now, have another break, and we're going to go to the final section, which you can sort of see here, section 4, analysing and synthesising. So thanks for listening. Have a little stretch, go get a drink of water, you know, maybe go back and replay some sections that you need to, and I'll get this set up for the final lecture. Thanks for listening.